tithe into our storehouse today. Well, what does that really mean? Well, we're going to talk about that tonight. But before we begin, let's get some background information and see what a tithe is, when the commandment to tithe start, and what the tithe means for us today. So, what is a tithe? The definition of a tithe is a tenth part, or 10%, given or paid as tribute, especially for religious purposes. When did this commandment begin? Well, it was part of the law that God gave to the 12 tribes of Israel more than 3,500 years ago. The law decreed that a tenth of the produce of the land and of the fruit trees and a tenth of the increase of the herds be given to the tribe of Levi in support of their services at the tabernacle. Now, were these tithing laws binding on Israel excessive? No, they were not. Jehovah assured the Israelites that the law would not be too difficult for them. And also, he told, as long as they did follow his laws, notice what he told them at Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 and 2. That's Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 and 2. And this is Moses speaking to the Israelites. Notice what he says. And if you will without fail listen to the voice of Jehovah your God, by being careful to do all his commandments that I am commanding you today, Jehovah your God will certainly put you high above all other nations of the earth. All these blessings will come upon you and overtake you, because you keep listening to the voice of Jehovah your God. So, as long as they faithfully observe God's commandments, including tithing, he promised them that he would bless them and help them out. Now, each Israelite was under a moral obligation to support true worship in this way. The Israelite, in that Malachi chapter 3, verse 8, we see that Jehovah accused Israelites who neglected tithing of robbing him in tithes and offerings. So, are we as Christians today required to tithe? And the answer is no. At no time were the first century Christians commanded to pay tithes. The primary purpose of the tithing arrangement under the law had been to support Israel's temple and priesthood. Now, if we go to Romans chapter 10, verse 4, we'll find another reason why we as Christians today do not have to tithe. That's Romans 10, verse 4. And that says, "For Christ is the end of the law, so that everyone exercising faith may have righteousness." So as we see there, the obligation to pay tithe ceased when the Mosaic law covenant came to an end as fulfilled through Christ's death. And as we read there, Christ is the end of the law. So Christians from and after 33 CE became part of a new spiritual priesthood that was not supported by tithes. Yet tithing has a symbolic meaning for us today. Consider what Jehovah says at Malachi chapter 3, verse 10. That's Malachi chapter 3, verse 10. And there you'll find this warm invitation from Jehovah. He says, "Bring the entire tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house. And test me out, please, in this regard," Jehovah of armies says, "to see whether I will not open to you the floodgates of the heavens and pour out on you a blessing until there is nothing lacking." Or the footnote says for tithe, or all the tenth parts. So we see that the tithe, or the tenth part, does not mean giving our all to Jehovah, because we bring our all to him only once, when we dedicate ourselves to him and get baptized. But rather, bringing the entire tithe into the storehouse means our regularly supporting the service at Jehovah's house. And this is a symbol or proof of the fact that we have dedicated our all to him. Now, since that we're no longer under the Mosaic law, offerings of a spiritual kind are now what God expects. The Apostle Paul speaks of two sacrifices that we can offer to Jehovah. He described our witnessing work as an offering, and then he also mentioned another type of sacrifice at Hebrews 13:16, saying, "Moreover, do not forget to do good and to share what you have with others, for God is well pleased with such sacrifices." So it said there to share what you have with others, and that would include the material things that we have. So we are obligated to bring to Jehovah's storehouse both spiritual and material tithes. Now, as baptized Christians, we are fully dedicated to Jehovah, but he allows us to choose a portion of what we have, a symbolic tithe, to use in a service. It is whatever our circumstances allow or what our heart impels us to use. We can bring spiritual tithes to Jehovah's house. Some of these offerings include our time, energy, and resources used in kingdom preaching and disciple-making work. Also included are attending Christian meetings, visiting sick and elderly fellow believers. And our tithe also includes the material contributions that we make available and for use in Jehovah's service. Now, how much we give will vary from person to person because we all have different circumstances. But let each one of us show our appreciation and love for Jehovah by bringing the whole tithe into the storehouse and doing the best that we can. Then we can be confident that Jehovah will continue to bless us as he did the Israelites until there is no more want.